Our second panel focuses on Europe's startup ecosystem. It's been said that Europe is like a sleeping giant, lots of potential, but not enough momentum. 5 speakers, Karine Veneri, Till Clerks, Dimitris Kalavros, Aiste Liman, and Lynn Seegers, are here to share their experiences across Europe. Jean Name will be moderating this panel. Please welcome Jean Name.
Great. Okay, so I thought we'd just start off the session by just going through the diversity of people that we have in Lebanon today. We have people from all over Europe. So if we just start off, I'd like all of you guys to introduce yourselves and where you guys have come from and how far you've traveled, and maybe a little bit about your plane journey here.
You want me to start? Okay, I'm Tel Clerks. I'm 20 years old now, and I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and so quite far away, first time in Lebanon. And I run my own startup. It's Tel.nl, and it's a grocery delivery company. So what we do is we deliver organic groceries, everything from meat and fish to toilet paper to whatever you need. We sell everything, and we deliver it by electric bike. So Amsterdam Dutch-style delivery.
Nice.
And well, that's what I do. And I'm currently working. I've been doing this for 4 years now, since I was 15, and now I'm working to reshape the business into delivering not groceries but meals.
Fantastic. Dimitri?
Hi, so I'm Dimitris, I'm 27. I come from Greece, so Mediterranean Brotherhood, guys. It's my first time in Lebanon, and thank you. Thanks for the invite. Thank you, Bank of Lebanon and Samer. I have 2 startup companies. The first one is called Nest Media, and it's a content studio. We produce content, high-quality content for brands and organizations, and we're active in the field of native advertising and content campaigns online. The second startup is actually an acceleration company. It's called Foundation, started about 18 months ago, based in Athens. And what we do there is that we create acceleration programs for young first-time entrepreneurs in this country, in Greece, and that's all for me.
Fantastic. Karina?
Hi everybody, I'm Karine Veneri, 29 years old. I come from Italy. Actually, I set up my business. It's 1000 Italy. It's an application mobile focused on incoming tourists in Italy. Basically, we have found, we hope so, a way to monetize each entry, tourist entry in Italy. So it's a new way to, we would like to become like an incoming leading company in Italy.
Fantastic. Sure.
Hello, my name is Aiste Liman, and I'm working with research projects, mainly working with connecting research and entrepreneurship currently in Europe. And additionally, I'm building entrepreneurial ecosystem in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is most difficult and least developed country in European continent as such.
Fantastic. And Lynn?
Hi, I'm Leen. Thank you for the invitation. First time Beirut. So I'm working for a blog called tech.eu. So it's an online magazine actually focused on everything what happens in technology in Europe. So it's a weekly magazine, but we also have a newsletter. So except for the content, also the team of founders is really important. Maybe you kind of know Robin Waters, Alex Barrera, Roxanne Varza, John Bradford. So we have a very, very strong team of founders, and also not to forget Ivo Spiegel from Croatia. So with the team, we aim to create more visibility and awareness for startups and entrepreneurs across Europe, and not only in Paris, Madrid, London, and Berlin, but also in emerging regions like we have here today on stage.
Fantastic. So we have a very diverse group of people who are all entrepreneurs in very different countries and very different economies. And so I have a list of questions here. And really what we're going to be looking at is addressing what the challenges are and what opportunities you guys have found within your own market space. Now, something that's very close to home, in London we had a recession not too long ago, and that sparked a big move and a big change in industry. Now I know Greece also had a big crisis. Do you want to tell me how that affected your startup community, and is it still apparent? And
yeah, I mean, we're all over headlines for the last 5 years, I assume. So good news are that obviously we were experiencing, in my opinion, the last phases of the crisis, but I think it's important to notice that the crisis was a wonderful chance and still is for my country, as you mentioned, to have a cultural shift. So during the morning session at the beginning of the conference, I really listened carefully all the talks, and I see many similarities between Lebanon and Greece. The diaspora issue, brain drain, so really talented people who actually leave the country to work elsewhere. We have the same things in Greece. So obviously, especially before the crisis, entrepreneurship was not part of the option for a young guy or a young girl. What we have experienced so far the last 5 to 6 years is that because of the crisis and because of the fact that because of the high unemployment, of course, in my country, young people were more willing to kick off their businesses and explore entrepreneurship as a serious option for their future. And because startup entrepreneurs actually produce the good news, let's say, in this country, we started to spread the news of entrepreneurship all over the country. So imagine national-wide TV stations and headlines and newspapers, traditional newspapers, covering stories about startup entrepreneurs. I'm not talking about TechCrunch, of course. Well, we all read TechCrunch and TechEU and other European or international media outlets, but having traditional media covering startup entrepreneurship and trying to spread the news that there are young people out there trying to build something out of pretty much nothing are definitely good news to start with. During the last 3 years, we have seen the rise also of VC funds. So the European Investment Fund has started across Europe a program called Jeremy that led to the creation of 4 different Jeremy ICT funds in my country. So right now we have around 70 million to invest in Greek talent and Greek companies or Greece-based companies. So to sum up my answer, crisis was a good thing for Greece, in my country, and I think what's next for us and our biggest obstacle or challenge is to actually find our place in Europe, in the European ecosystem.
That's very interesting. I think it's true to a certain extent that there are similarities, and I think the media has got a great role to play, and so that's a very good point. You know, making sure that successes don't go amiss, and also reporting good news as well as bad news. So everyone here from the media, I think you should be encouraged to report all the good things that are happening within the entrepreneurs. And I know you guys are doing a good job at doing this already, because I read about a lot of successful guys and a lot of people who are trying to start things up in Lebanon. Again, one of the other things is fragmented markets. I think in the Middle East, we often try and view the market as one big market, trying to group together all the Arabic-speaking countries. And again, what do you feel about that in Europe? I know that's something that's close to heart.
Yeah, well, I'm from the Netherlands, which is also quite a small country. We have 16 million people, so you would expect us to be one of the, well, we sort of have to look at Europe as our market instead of at the Netherlands because it's so small, and still we don't really manage to do that. So whenever, well, for example, I notice I'm talking to investors now because I'm reshaping my business, and I just noticed that whenever I try to look at for example, when we talk about valuation, which is always, of course, a hot topic, when you talk about valuation, I, of course, tell them, like, yeah, we can go through all of Europe within the blink of an eye, and we can get really big here. And investors, they just don't believe it, and that's partly also true, because the rules and the situations and the cultures and the people are everywhere, they're so different. And, you know, I think it's not something we can change very quickly. But it's, I think, the most important challenge that we need to overcome is to really start working on the single market. And every time, for example, in the Netherlands, when political parties, they start talking about getting out of the EU or stopping with the euro because we need to pay for Greece, for example, all that sort of stuff. I'm like, you know, I'm very disappointed by that, because I think it's very short-sighted to stop with the EU project, like we can stop with that, but to stop with that just because we have some setbacks now and maybe not everything is working as we hoped. But I really believe it's one of the biggest opportunities we have to get Europe to be way more entrepreneurial and successful.
That's interesting. So you feel your immediate growth is into Europe as opposed to somewhere else?
Or, sorry,
your immediate growth of your company would be into Europe as opposed to the US or China, or is that how you approach it?
Well, it would be nice if it is, because if I would think like where would I go to grow my company now, it might actually turn out for me that I would go to the US after the Netherlands, just because I have a big market there that I can try to penetrate at once. While if I would start from out the Netherlands going through Europe, I would have to go country by country, and in every country I need lawyers and I need people that can help me with the language and the rules, because it's so different in every country.
And just opening up to you guys, have you had any experience trying to grow into Europe and tackling Europe as a single market? What about you, Lina?
I can speak from what we have learned from reviewing our startups and having interviewed lots of entrepreneurs. And recently there was a guest post of a French-based entrepreneur who was trying to raise funds in Europe as opposed to the US. And she actually made a very good summary of what the main differences were. And I think one of the main pillars, what she confirmed, was that in Europe they're much more skeptic, and you really need to convince them to invest, as opposed to in the US, they really see an opportunity. Another example that she mentioned was the fact that in Europe they speak about a total addressable market. You really have to show numbers for the next 3 years, as opposed to the US, where they look at the potential market, the product, the team. She also talked about the time actually to raise early stage funding. In Europe, it can take up to 6 months. In US, 1 month. So it's really a big difference. Although there's a big entry, the threshold to early stage funding is very low. It is very different from raising funds in US.
Sure. And with regards to raising funding, I think we all have that slide where we have to address what a total addressable market is. Is there anything else that, Karina, you've experienced? How do you look at your total addressable market?
My business is a little bit different. I mean, actually, we start from Italy because we want to leverage our unique power to attract tourists. And we have started to, our pilot is with Russia, so actually Russian people coming in Italy. And we have 22 offices in Russia that release visa, and in the while the Russian tourists take a visa, right now they download the application. So basically what we do is physically get the tourists and drive him to the application, so digital experience. We do this in Russia, we're gonna do this in China too, in Emirates too. So we are looking to develop our business in other countries, of course.
Fantastic. So one thing that strikes me about this stage right now is we're 50-50, men and females, male and females, which is really encouraging because there's a big issue across tech, especially with females being involved in tech startups and entrepreneurs, as entrepreneurs. So I'd love to hear a little bit from each one of you guys about any struggles that you guys have had and how you feel you can encourage some of the female entrepreneurs in this crowd to really be involved in building startups.
Okay. First of all, I think women entrepreneurship, especially in the tech sector, is not an issue of being female or male, is more educational, cultural issue as such. In Europe, we have huge problems with girls to be attracted to STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So just if you do not have girls that are learning the basics of technology sector, you will not have later on female entrepreneurs as well. So this is my basic standing point, that we should actually strengthen and encourage educational aspects at the very young age as such. And we work also with entrepreneurial education from very beginning, as Lynn mentioned before, because there is substantial lack in the culture of European countries to teach younger generations to do business and technology sectors.
Thank you. That was a good answer. So on that note of education, I'm going to be talking about the knowledge economy later on this afternoon, and it'd be interesting to kind of see where you feel science, kind of, which is a big part, and investing in education, how does that integrate with startups, and should we be looking at building scientific infrastructure to facilitate better spin-offs out of universities and therefore startups in that way?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Science and startups, something that I know is close to your heart.
Okay, this is this is my passion, science, right?
Should we look? Sorry.
Okay. Europe overall, this is European phenomenon. It's so described as such because Europe has very strong scientific base, and Europe from year to year is investing a lot in R&D, in research and technological development. So from this year, from 2014 to 2020, we have a huge program which is called Horizon 2020, which is allocating nearly 80 billion euros for the research. Out of that 80 billion euros, only 3 billion euros actually allocated to SMEs, small, medium enterprises, which are research-driven. So we do have a huge gap between the research projects and innovation potential of these projects or exploitation of the research outcomes. And this is really huge issue in Europe as such to address. And I would just like to stress out that I see research as an unfair advantage for the startups or for the new companies. We have such a great examples from USA with Elizabeth Holmes being the youngest female entrepreneur, youngest billionaire, which based her company on the research on how to develop a blood testing mechanism, hardware, software, and methodology, which would be not intrusive and reduce the fear of the people to go to do checkups. We have interesting initiatives in Europe as well, which is Aeromobile, the first flying car, or even smaller ones, which actually struggling with commercialization of the products. I know concrete examples from Croatia, so I'm working in Western Balkan region. One app is Photomath, which developed recognition mechanism to recognize the mathematical equations from the picture and provide you solutions. So you just take a photo of mathematical equation, it provides you a solution. Another one is a startup led by doctors, and they actually developed non-painful solution to treat tinnitus, which is a ring, constant ring in your ears. And they develop an app which can solve that solution based on the medical research and clinical studies and testing on the actual people before, which involves really long process, which solved that problem for most of the people by playing their most favorite music. So the current treatment of tinnitus is very painful. However, the market size of these kind of startups is very limited. So we are not talking about global game changers, next billionaires or unicorns of the startup scene. However, these startups that base on their business on the research, they have their specific niche and they have very viable model and potential they can change the future.
I agree with that. So I think research is very important, and ultimately we should be looking at great academic institutions to provide us with great human capital, but also great research ideas. Does anyone have anything else they want to add on the kind of, is there anything in Greece in terms of scientific investments into universities?
In Greece, I don't know about Greece. I would rather talk about maybe the region, I mean the Balkans. I think that one of the main problems we have in Europe when we speak about Europe is that we consider Europe to be Germany and the United Kingdom and France, so the big markets. I think there are some really high potential startup companies and some really talented people working from Bucharest, from Sofia. I can see my good friend Stefan from Launch Hub in the first row. He has his panel tomorrow in Athens. So I think it's essential for Europe to actually try, as we mentioned at the beginning of this panel, to eliminate fragmentation by providing access to capital throughout Europe. For example, German program per se is not structured for pan-European investments. It's not structured for cross-European investments. It's only focused around the country. So, for example, Greek, German funds are not allowed to do investments in Bulgaria. All Bulgarian funds are not allowed to do investments elsewhere. So this is a fundamental program. When European institutions try to come up with new ideas on how to help innovation, they must think Europe as a whole, or at least as a region, say Southeastern Europe or Central Europe, or countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Germany together, because different parts of the continent, sorry, they have different problems.
Great. I've had a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs in the region about raising funds. And I think it's something that's important that we all have to do, which is raise capital to be able to drive and grow. I'd like to get some of your opinions about what it's like to raise funds back at home, whether it's Greece or Italy, or where you guys are looking for fundraising. Maybe we could start with.
Yeah, well, actually, when I started my company, I was 15, and I needed 4,000 euros to start, on top of my 800 euros that I saved by handing out flyers all over Amsterdam. So what I did actually, I emailed an investor that I knew from TV show Dragon's Den. I think you got it in the UK as well. And she replied, and she was very enthusiastic. And she actually said, like, well, you're the first person of your age that ever emailed me. And well, after some talks with her, she borrowed me the money. So getting my initial investment was very easy, but of course that might have had something to do with the amount of money that I needed. I do actually think that's the reason, by the way, that why we should all start so much younger. Because when you start very young, you don't need any money for your house or your children or your whatever you need for your car. So I think the best age to start a business is really when you're 15 or 16 years old. Because now I live on my own, I'm 20 now, and it's already, you know, I need some money to pay for food, and I didn't used to need that money. So the younger you start, the easier it is. So we really need to get that into our heads. But anyway, at this moment, I managed to save some money as well, and I want to try to start small, just because basically I would love to start with a big investor and a big amount of money and go straight to the top. But the problem is that in the Netherlands, the investors are just very conservative when it comes to valuations. So I would have to give away 40% of my company in exchange for a few $100,000, and I just don't want to do that because I'm confident that it's worth more. So I just want to show that it works with a small investment from my own money. And if I can show that, then I'll go back to the investors to raise some serious money.
So you want to prove something before you raise around?
Of course, when there's investors that already believe in it, then they're always welcome, but I haven't met them yet. So I'm like, I'll just prove them wrong. And then I'll just wait until they come for me instead of having me to come to them.
I think that's a good way to go. I think sometimes you have to prove a point before you go out and try and raise money. And you really need to demonstrate.
What's with the Lebanese flies? They always go to the people that are talking. Have you seen that? It's like very annoying.
That's true. Maybe someone could build an app for that. Karina, what about you and fundraising? What are the challenges that you've had? Is it the same dynamic in Italy?
Okay, so basically we start with this strong Russian channel, Russian coming tourist channel. In 3 months we had 30,000 downloads. So with this first result, I knocked to the door of Money Change. Basically, they have 80 branches in all the airport and rail station in Italy. So because our idea is the one to get the tourists physically and drive it to the digital. So with this idea, they put money in. So I closed the second fundraising. And it's a good experience of open innovation because actually Money Change is a very huge company, but they enter in our company and they don't stress our strategy guideline. They just support us with revamping partnership and to business development. my business,
so smart money is important, I guess, which is the point that you're trying to make.
Yeah.
So when you're raising money, I guess it's important to also do the due diligence on your investors, which is something that I've learned how to do myself. Lean, what about you, your conversations with entrepreneurs? What challenges have they had in raising funds, and how much should they raise, and what are the things that you've found?
So I have actually two perspectives on this question, because Tech.eu is a startup on its own, so I'm CEO. So the whole point of hiring, that the founding team hired me, is to get a sustainable business model. The way they actually raised money a year ago with the start of the blog was just because the people behind the blog were extremely networked. They're experts in their own fields. So they actually quite easily raised the first round of funding. So that's quite exceptional. Then again, from the point of view of Tech.eu, so from all the interviews and the research and the talks we had with entrepreneurs, today in Europe, it's very easy to find early stage funding. So there are, I think, 93 accelerators across Europe. You have angel funds, seed funds like Seed Camp, accelerators like Techstars and Startup Bootcamp and Launch 48. So there's a lot of early stage funding available. Also in a lot of cities, not only in the hubs, you have a lot of conferences, meetups, incubators. So it's very common almost to set up your own company. So everyone can be an entrepreneur today. It doesn't mean that everyone should be an entrepreneur, but it's almost very sexy in Europe to start your own business. And also from the corporate side, it used to be like very fashionable to have a corporate like GE or a bank going into CSR, and now actually it's CSR and starting a workshop related to entrepreneurship, craftsmanship. I had a call, I guess, this week from GE because they're opening a garage in Brussels and they're going to roll out across Europe, where they actually want to link their brand to entrepreneurship. So there's lots of opportunities in the early stage capital, the early stage funding. Then again, we, from our community and from the startups we interview, we see there's a big gap in late stage capital. So to raise funds from 5 million up until 500 million, or 20 million up until 500 million. So there's it's very difficult for a company that's growing really fast to find that money in Europe. Then they are looking to the US or China to find that funding. And also on the level of exits in Europe, it's quite difficult because there are not a lot of Facebooks and Googles to actually invest in technology startups in Europe at this point. There could be an option that big media companies or retailers based in Europe, like Bertelsmann, Axel Springer, Carrefour, who are today too shy, actually become more confident in European startups and start investing more to keep the talent and the companies in Europe. But as today, it's not the case. You have a couple of exceptions, like, for example, Axel Springer investing in the Dutch startup Blendel, but those are still exceptions.
Anyone, you want to add something to that?
Okay, I just wanted to add on Lynn's remark, which is said it's difficult to raise large rounds of investments. So Europe overall is facing the so-called funding gap, which is from Series A to B or to C as such. And this mainly refers to our investment landscape in Europe as a whole, because most of VCs, actually 40% of venture capital, is publicly backed money. These kind of investments tend to look for security, for secure returns, instead of risking for the big ideas. And they also tend to sell companies early, so as soon as they see that they become profitable, they are happy with 2-3% of a return of investment, instead of waiting for the company grow and become stronger. So overall, the problem with European investment landscape is first public money, which is largely dominating the VC landscape. On the other hand, from the angel investors' perspective, I have been in a Balkan Venture Forum recently in Slovenia, and I have talked with lots of investors, and they stressed out one very important factor. The investment as such is so fragmented, fragmentally regulated across the European Union that it basically makes nearly impossible to make cross-border investments. So if you are an investor based in one country, it's very unlikely you're going to invest in a startup from another country. Some companies go around these rules because they scout for the companies in the regions around, but then they require these startups to incorporate in their countries. And this is how they can provide the financing or investment into these companies. However, overall, that cross-border financing or overall for allowing investors to invest on Europe scale, not in their specific countries, is a very specific issue for Europe.
Very good point. On that note, when we went to raise money, I sat with many investors, and we said, you know, we're doctors, we're trying to build a business, and we got a lot of no's. And I think one of the things is to go to the right people when you're raising money. How have you guys dealt with no's? Because we've all had no's, and maybe we can go around and just tell me of, you know, maybe a time when you had a no, and how did you respond to that, and how did you go about redirecting or rechanneling your business to address that?
Well, yes, it's a low. Well, of course, it's all ups and downs. I mean, you don't even look at lows as lows. It's just like part of what happens every day. I think that I actually, you know, for me the nice thing, I started when I was 15, so you always have full-time school as this thing that sort of, you know, always has to be the biggest thing in your life. So actually for me, like, most of my lows were actually at school, because I sort of kept failing at school because I never was there, basically. So for me, just any time I could work on my business was already a high. Just even if it wasn't going in the right direction or the way I wanted, I was just happy that at that moment I had the time to work on it, because you know, the lows were usually when my school called my parents again to tell them that I wasn't there or stuff. So, you know, I always get so energized by just working on my product, and you know, if something goes wrong, you can always fix it in some way and stay positive. And I mean, I haven't had real deep crisis or something. I mean, I've run out of money in the beginning sometime, but that's like, you know, that sort of fixes itself if you just, yeah. No, I couldn't worry too much about it.
Good point. I know a few Lebanese guys who are not going to school as well to work on their startups. Anyway, Dimitri, when you've been told no before by an investor or by someone, you know, no, I won't invest in you, or no, I don't believe in what you're doing, how did you respond?
So I think that entrepreneurship per se is a learning process, and it's a way of life, and without the lifestyle you all get through the various media. So I think you have to be and look confident when you pitch your idea, when you pitch who you are and your team and your vision. And there will be many people out there trying to, you know, make you look full or make you feel uncomfortable when you just share your idea and your vision. But I think the number one thing you need to have in mind is that it's a learning process. It's something that it takes time. It's something that it takes effort. It's something that it takes failure to end up being successful. I mean, Churchill said that failure is not fatal. Success is not permanent. So you have to keep it up, move forward always, and always, just be sure that you have done everything in your powers to make your startup, your idea, your product come true and conquer the world. As long as you feel good with yourself, and as long as you feel good for your teammates and your team, there is no one really out there who will be able to break you and make you stop what you're doing.
Good point. So I completely agree with that. We all need to learn from failures, and I think a no isn't something that should make you give up if you believe in what you're doing. Karina, have you had any difficult investor meetings yourself?
Basically, I'm here, so I would like to first understand which culture, which is the economy of the country that I want to have as a partner. So I'm here in Middle East because I would like to extend my business in this area. And first of all, I would like to know which is the culture, the startup business and the ecosystem, and how much they can invest on average in startup. So it's a discovering experience for me right now. So first of all, I understand who is the who stay to the other side, and after I will develop a strategy to conquer it.
Good. So I think overall we all agree that there are opportunities and challenges, no matter where you are, whether you're in Amsterdam, you're in Greece, or in Italy, or wherever you are in the world. On that note, is there any final points that you guys want to raise about what opportunities and challenges you've experienced in Europe, or whether there's something that you feel you need to mention?
Maybe from a tech.eu's perspective, again, coming back to the last question, I think that's a challenge today in Europe, is that a lot of entrepreneurs see failure as something bad, as embarrassing, but actually it's not the entrepreneur itself, but it's much more their parents. So on that level, actually, tech.eu and a lot of accelerators across Europe are working at a project in collaboration with the European Commission, who actually have this strong view of one single digital market. They're not there yet today. The objective is to come there in a couple of years, so it's going to be slowly. One of the projects that we are supporting is about failure and how actually that's a good thing. That's starting in January, together with most important accelerators across Europe. So I do believe that the European Commission is working on a lot of issues that has been raised here today, like for example the fragmentation, the complicated labor laws, tax laws on a local and European level, but the digital single market is not there yet, but there is a strong hope.
Very good. So just to summarize that, I think it's been a great panel. We've covered a lot, guys, and I'm sure you've inspired many people in the crowd, not only to overcome failure, but to embrace it and to learn from it. Good. Thank you very much, everyone.